I walked toward the storage corner I'd set up for the holiday, expecting rows of canned goods and bags stacked the way I'd arranged them. The sight stopped me cold. Every shelf stood bare. The boxes I'd filled over weeks were gone, not a single item left behind. "Emily." My voice carried down the hall. "Where's all the food?" Her answer came fast from the other room. "I took it to the church. They needed it. No hesitation. No question, just a statement as if she'd done something small and routine." I stepped closer to her doorway. "Why didn't you say anything before you left with it?" She sat on the edge of her bed, tapping her foot like she'd been waiting for this. "You never care about those drives anyway." That line hit harder than the empty shelves. "That's not true. I planned those donations carefully." Emily shrugged. "You control everything. I helped. They appreciate it." A familiar tension spread between us, the kind that had grown sharper over the past year. I kept my tone steady. "I'm asking for the reason you made that choice without telling me." Her eyes drifted downward for a second. "People from the group expect me to show up with something real. I can't disappoint them." There it was, a slip. Something about proving herself to whoever she was trying to impress. She caught herself and sat straighter. "They count on me," she added, firmer this time. My chest tightened, not from anger over the food, but from the way she delivered her lines like they'd been practiced. She had her defense ready before I even walked through the door. "You took everything I said, not a portion. All of it." Emily folded her arms. "Well, they needed a lot." Long seconds passed. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask if I'd planned to donate differently. She acted as if the supplies belonged to her. "Emily," I said, trying once more, "you know how long it took to gather that. And I did something good with it. Why isn't that enough?" Her voice climbed a sharper edge than before. "You always make things harder." The accusation nudged something deep, but I stayed still. "This isn't about you helping. It's about you deciding alone." She looked away, jaw tight. "Whatever. It's done." My hands rested on my hips for a moment as I steadied myself. Arguments with her had become quick assaults, each one layered with meaning she refused to name. "Emily," I said quietly, "how much did you take?" You know, she shot back all of it. "You saw. That final line hung between us like a barrier neither of us wanted to cross." I nodded once. "Then you know what you did." The drive to the grocery store didn't settle anything. A knot sat in my chest the whole way there. The list I'd written a month earlier stayed folded in my pocket, the edges worn from handling it too often. I headed straight to the customer service counter and asked for the manager. He recognized me from my usual supply runs. "What can I help you with, Michael?" he asked. "I'm looking for duplicate receipts. Someone printed copies of my purchases this past week." He typed for a moment, then frowned at the screen. "Looks like we reprinted a batch 3 days ago." A young woman picked them up. Brown hair sweatshirt with a church logo. That ring a bell. It rang too clearly. "That would be Emily," I said. He gave a small nod. "She said you needed them for a donation report." A donation report. The words tasted wrong. He printed another set for me. I thanked him and left before my frustration rose again. The drive home took me past the church parking lot. A group of volunteers unloaded boxes from a van, their chatter drifting across the asphalt. Someone laughed and said, "That girl Emily, she's something. Pulled all that together on her own. Her dad wouldn't help at all." Another volunteer chimed in. "Yeah, she told us he's stubborn about giving. Guess she's the generous one." A pause. Then, another voice. "She's a good kid. Wish more families supported their teens like she does." My jaw clenched before I even realized it. Whatever story Emily had spun, it was spreading faster than I imagined. Each comment chipped away at the version of me they thought they knew. I rolled the window back up and merged onto the road. By the time I reached Renee Coleman's office, the tension behind my eyes pulsed with every heartbeat. She worked at the city's community center and had helped me on volunteer shifts before. When she opened the door and saw my expression, she motioned me in right away. "You look worn out," she said. "What happened, Emily?" I answered. She emptied my holiday storage and gave everything to the church. That's only part of it. Renee gestured for me to sit across from her. "Tell me the rest." Explaining the receipts, the comments in the parking lot, and the sudden shift in how people spoke about me felt unreal. Renee listened with her hands resting on the desk, her brow tightening as each detail surfaced. "Michael," she finally said, "I've seen this before. That group she's trying to impress. They're not known for handling donations cleanly. Young volunteers feel pressured to show they can deliver more than they have. She took everything I said, not a portion everything I prepared." Renee leaned back. Kids under that kind of pressure do things out of fear or pride. Emily might be tangled in both. "That doesn't excuse forging a story about me," I replied more firmly than planned. Her gaze softened. "No, it doesn't. But it explains why she's clinging to that group. They reward her image more than her effort." I let the words settle. Renee wasn't defending Emily. She was mapping out the forces shaping her. Another layer added itself to the puzzle, one I hadn't considered when anger took over. "Has she mentioned any problems there?" Renee asked. "She just said she didn't want to disappoint them." Renee tapped a pen on the desk. "Then something's pushing her harder than she can admit. Families get dragged into these situations without warning." That part I understood. The past few months had felt like being pulled into a storm I didn't see forming. Renee continued, "If that group is still operating the same way, I've heard they push kids to compete with each other. Who donates the most? Who brings in the biggest haul? They call it leadership building. It's more like manipulation." My hand rested on my knee to steady myself. She made it sound like she had no choice. "That's how pressure works," she said. "It convinces you that the line between right and wrong is flexible." The comment hung in the space between us. Renee didn't hide her concern, and something in her tone told me she believed the situation could escalate. "Michael," she said, "I know you want to fix this cleanly, but don't assume it ends with the missing food. Keep your eyes open." A breath filled my lungs slowly. "That's what I'm trying to do." Renee nodded once. "Call me if anything shifts." Leaving her office, the winter air carried a colder weight than when I'd arrived. The sky had darkened, and the church's building glowed in the distance. Cars still filled the lot. Volunteers moved in and out of the side entrance, their pace steady even at this late hour. The next morning carried the kind of tension that follows a long night of thinking without answers. My truck rolled into the church lot before volunteers arrived. A few cars were already parked near the entrance, hinting that the group Emily admired kept early hours. I stepped into the lobby and looked around for someone who could tell me more. A young volunteer sorting pamphlets spotted me. "Hey, you're Emily's dad, right?" he asked cheerfully, unaware of the weight pressing on my shoulders. "Yes," I said. "I'm trying to understand who's leading the holiday program she's part of." He gestured toward a table. "She's doing great. Actually, she already turned in the application for your family's support request. That'll help her get higher priority for the Christmas drive." It took a full second for his words to make sense. "What request?" I asked. "The financial assistance application," he replied. "She said you didn't want to ask for help yourself, so she handled it." A pulse thudded at my temples. "We didn't apply for anything." His smile faded. "But the form's already filed. With your electronic signature." A cold stillness crept through my chest, not from the building, but from the realization forming in front of me. Who approved that, I asked. He pointed toward a small office near the hall. Ms. Bennett. She supervises the program. Stepping toward her door felt like pushing through an invisible barrier. Ms. Bennett, a middle-aged woman with a calm expression, looked up from her laptop. Michael Wright, come in. The invitation didn't ease anything, but I sat across from her. I just heard my daughter submitted a support request under my name, I said. I didn't authorize any application. Ms. Bennett folded her hands. Emily explained that you were embarrassed to sign in person. She said you preferred the digital version. We allow that in certain cases. She told you I was embarrassed. My voice stayed measured, but the sting grew sharper. She never mentioned any of this to me. Ms. Bennett hesitated, sensing that something was off. She was very insistent. Spoke about hardship at home, reduced income bills stacking up. That's why we fast-tracked her request. Every sentence felt like a fresh blow. None of that is true. Her expression shifted. Michael, we relied on her information. If anything needs correction, we can take another look. A printed packet sat on her desk. She pushed it toward me. This is the application. My name sat at the top. The signature line at the bottom carried a familiar curve, one close enough to resemble my digital signature that a quick glance wouldn't expose the forgery. But under a harder look, the spacing and angle were wrong. Emily submitted this herself, I asked. She typed your name and told us she had permission. A part of me knew better than to react loudly. A line Abraham Lincoln once quoted crossed my mind. A lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on. Emily had gotten her lie well underway. Thank you, I said. I need to handle this. Ms. Bennett gave a slow nod, unsure whether she'd been misled or had simply trusted too easily. Stepping back into the hallway, I caught glimpses of volunteers greeting one another, moving between rooms. Somewhere in that crowd, Emily's version of our life had already become their truth. The idea settled heavily as I walked toward the exit. Wind brushed through the entryway as the door swung open. I stood under the covered step, sorting through the shock. The stolen groceries were only the start. Using my name to request financial help. That cut deeper. It wasn't about money. It was what the lie implied about me. A family man too ashamed to ask for assistance. A stubborn parent who refused to show up. A burden the daughter had bravely taken on. That story would spread faster than facts ever could. On the drive home, thoughts tangled faster than they could be sorted. Every mile added a new suspicion. Had she planned this for weeks? Did the missing receipts tie into the application? Had she crafted these claims while acting like nothing was wrong? The house felt still when I walked in. Emily's door stayed shut, a clear signal that she intended to avoid me. A sliver of light slipped out from the gap under her door, meaning she was awake and aware that I'd returned. Emily, I said through the doorway, we need to talk. No response. The silence told me more than anything she could have said. She wasn't ready to face what she'd done, or she didn't think she had to. I moved down the hall toward the kitchen. My phone pinged on the counter. The screen showed an email from the church office, except the message had already been marked as read. I hadn't opened anything. A chill crept in as I tapped the notification. Only the opening line appeared before the preview cut off. Regarding the assistance funds for your household. My thumb hovered, hesitation tightening my breath before I opened the full message. The email opened with a blunt line the church had approved $1,200 in holiday assistance for my struggling household, and the funds had already been transferred to the secondary debit card on my account, the same card Emily used. Scrolling further confirmed everything. Her application, her statements about hardship, her claim that I couldn't manage our expenses. Each sentence pushed a fresh weight onto my chest. A call to the bank followed. The representative pulled up my account and paused longer than usual. Most of the assistance funds were withdrawn yesterday, and the day before she said, "ATM transactions. Would you like me to flag the card?" "Yes," I answered. "Freeze it immediately." The remaining balance wasn't much, enough to show she hadn't hesitated. Before I could process that loss, my phone buzzed again. A vendor from work left a voicemail, then another. When I returned the call, the supplier explained the issue in a clipped tone. "Michael, the card linked to your job account got declined twice this morning. We can't release the materials until it's resolved. That card should never have dipped low enough to bounce. Emily, withdrawing those funds, must have forced an automatic transfer from my primary account." The embarrassment traveled straight through the receiver. "I'll fix it," I said. "Please hold the order." The vendor softened. "We know you're reliable. Just get us an updated payment." A conversation with my supervisor followed. I kept the explanation brief, careful not to drag my family's trouble into the workplace. He accepted it with a sigh, but the strain in his voice told me the delay would ripple through the schedule. The drive home carried an exhaustion that reached deeper than the day itself. Pulling into the driveway, I spotted a familiar sedan parked by the curb. Several church volunteers waited near the porch. Emily stood among them, backpack slung over her shoulder, ready to leave with the group. One woman noticed my truck and stiffened. Another leaned closer to Emily, as if shielding her. Emily glanced at me and turned away, hoping to slip past the moment. "Emily," I called. "We need to talk." Her friends watched with narrowed eyes, protective in a way that made my stomach twist. They formed a barrier around her as though I posed a threat instead of being the man raising her. "I have somewhere to be," Emily muttered. "You won't understand." "That's not your decision," I said. "Come inside." A young man from the group stepped forward. "She's fine. We've got her." I looked at him, then at the others, each one bracing as if an argument with me was inevitable. Whatever story Emily had built, they had swallowed it whole. "I'm speaking to my daughter," I said. "This isn't your place." Emily shot me a glare and tried to step off the porch. I said I have somewhere to be. My arm moved just enough to block her path, not forceful, but firm. She froze for a second, startled that I didn't simply let her walk away again. "Emily," I said, keeping my voice steady, "go back in the house." Her jaw tightened. "You're making a scene." "Then end it," I answered. "Go inside." One volunteer whispered to another, and I caught the words, "Should we call Olivia?" drifting across the yard. A phone appeared in someone's hand. Their judgment radiated toward me, thick enough to feel. Emily's gaze bounced between us, her loyalty pulling in the wrong direction. "You don't need to do this," she said barely above a mumble. "They're waiting." "So am I," I replied. After a tense pause, her shoulders slumped just enough to show she'd given up trying to slip past me. She shoved her backpack strap higher and headed through the doorway without a word. The volunteers watched her go, frowns settling on their faces like verdicts. One of them spoke into the phone, stepping aside as though preparing to escalate things. I stood in the entryway, hand resting on the frame, aware that the moment had shifted again, another fault line opening under my feet. The group huddled together near the walk, murmuring into the phone, their anger pointed squarely at me. Emily's footsteps creaked down the hall. Her door closed, not gently. She kept her arms crossed, waiting for me to say something first. "What were you thinking when you filed for financial assistance under my name?" I asked. "And why forge my signature?" Her chin lifted in defiance. "Everyone in the group does it. It's not a big deal. It's a big deal to me." "They told us it was normal," she snapped. "Other families get help all the time. I just did what they suggested." A breath steadied me, but my voice stayed level. "You misrepresented our situation. That's not guidance. That's fraud." Emily scoffed. You don't get it. You never do. My phone buzzed. Then again. Then again. 3 messages in the span of 10 seconds. The office number flashed on the screen. She kept talking while I glanced down project postponed until payment clears. Supervisor wants update immediately. Need explanation for vendor issue. Emily noticed the distraction. See, you care more about work than me. That isn't fair, I said, placing the phone face down on the table. This conversation matters, but so does the job that keeps a roof over our heads. Roof, she shot back. You think that's enough? I needed help. You weren't listening. That doesn't mean you get to twist the truth. Her voice rose. The money was compensation. For everything I've put up with. For everything you don't do. The words struck harder than I expected. Compensation? Yes, she yelled. I deserve things too. Before either of us could take another step into the argument, a sharp knock sounded at the door. Emily flinched. I opened it to find Olivia, the woman who handled compliance for the church's programs. Her expression held no warmth. We need to talk, she said. Now. I stepped aside enough for her to enter. Emily retreated toward the far end of the room, wiping her face as if preparing for sympathy. Olivia folded her hands. Michael, your daughter's application raised multiple concerns. Several parts of her story don't line up with our records. Which parts? I asked. For one, she stated you cut off her allowance entirely. She also claimed you refused to buy groceries unless she begged. My jaw tightened. Neither of those things are true. Olivia turned to Emily. Would you like to clarify why you wrote that? Emily's lower lip trembled. I didn't know what else to say. That's not an answer. Olivia said, her tone firmer. Emily burst into tears, collapsing into the same routine I'd seen too many times. Shoulders shaking, voice cracking in just the right places, hoping reactions would tilt in her favor. Olivia didn't move toward her. Crying won't resolve this, she said. You must give accurate information. Emily wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand. I thought it would make things easier. Easier for who I asked. For me, she shouted. I'm under pressure. They want us to show commitment. They want results. If I don't bring anything, they look at me like I'm worthless. Olivia raised an eyebrow. And so you created a narrative that your father withholds basic support. Emily stared at the floor. Another buzz rattled my phone. The supervisor again. Pressure pressed in from every direction, my job, my daughter, the church, all at once. Olivia sighed. Michael, the church board has to review this. The allegations Emily made about your home life are serious. The forged signature alone requires action. Emily's head jerked up. You're not going to punish me, are you? I was just trying to help. Help who? Olivia responded. Yourself? Or the group you're trying to impress? Emily looked at me, eyes swollen, searching for rescue. It wasn't guilt. It was fear of getting caught. You should know, Olivia continued, the board meeting is set for Saturday morning. Both of you need to attend. A heaviness settled into my shoulders. I'll be there. Emily took a step toward Olivia. Do we really have to? Can't we handle it some other way? We've already scheduled it, Olivia replied. This has gone beyond a private issue. Funds were misused and stories were spread. Her gaze shifted toward me. You deserve the chance to respond as well. Emily's tears returned softer this time. She looked small, cornered. For a moment I almost reached out to her, but something in her expression told me she still believed she could cry her way out of this. Olivia gathered her papers and moved towards the door. Please be on time. The board won't delay once everyone arrives. She stepped onto the porch. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving the tension hanging in the room like steam that refused to fade. The board gathered around a long table in the church's meeting room. Chairs, scraped papers shuffled, and no one spoke to me as I took a seat near the end. Emily sat apart from everyone, pushed into a corner, as if shrinking could make her look harmless. She kept her face lowered, hands clasped tight. Olivia opened the meeting with a firm tone. "Thank you for coming. We have concerns about the assistance application submitted by Emily Harris." A few heads turned toward me, waiting to see if I'd respond. I didn't. Olivia continued. "We've reviewed the information, and several inconsistencies appear between what Emily reported and our records." Emily's shoulders rose as she pulled a long, shaky breath. Her voice stayed small. "I told you everything. I didn't lie." A man from the finance team glanced at his folder. "That's what we need to clarify. He asked for the church accountant, a woman named Karen, to join us." She stepped into the room, holding a stack of documents. "We looked over the application again," she said, placing copies before the board. It included a financial statement showing very low income for Michael, far below what he reported in previous volunteer forms. She passed me a copy. My name sat at the top, along with a monthly income that didn't match reality in any way. "I didn't authorize this," I said. "Those numbers aren't mine." Karen nodded. "We also checked where the document came from. It appears to be pulled from a personal account that requires login access." Emily's grip on her chair tightened. She kept her eyes fixed on the floor. A board member frowned. "Michael, did you upload this file at any point?" "No." The accountant spoke again. "We traced the access time to Wednesday afternoon. According to our sign-in logs, someone used a computer in the church office during that window." A new murmur rolled through the room. Emily finally looked up. "I only checked my email," she said quickly. "I didn't take anything." Karen responded. "The system recorded a financial download, not email activity." Emily's face went pale. "Maybe someone hacked something. I didn't do anything wrong." The members exchanged glances. Olivia leaned forward. "Emily, you were logged in on the guest account using your church ID. We need honesty." Her lips pressed together as tears gathered. She kept shaking her head, whispering, "I didn't do it," over and over. One board member, a man who'd been stern since the start, turned to me. "Michael, this paints a very different picture than what we heard earlier. You're the one misrepresented here." The tone in the room shifted. The suspicion that had hovered over me for days dissolved, replaced by discomfort aimed at Emily. Their expressions carried a mix of disappointment and disbelief. Before the conversation could settle, Emily's voice rose sharply. "None of you understand. He barely pays attention to me. I've had to manage everything myself. I only applied because he leaves me alone all the time." She wiped her cheeks as the tears fell harder. "He doesn't even know what I deal with. I had to save myself." A few of the board members softened at her outburst. Emotion clouded their judgment instantly. They looked from her to me, unsure of where the truth lay again. I stayed silent. Arguing would only feed the chaos. Olivia cleared her throat. "This isn't about family disputes. It's about falsifying information to obtain funds." Emily's voice cracked. "I wasn't trying to steal anything. I needed help. You all know how expensive everything is. I can't do it alone." I finally spoke. "Emily, you're not alone. But you can't rewrite our circumstances to get what you want." "That's not what I did," she yelled. The room fell into disarray. People tried to speak at once. Emily cried harder. Olivia attempted to regain control. The accountant sorted through her papers again. The meeting teetered between fact and emotion. I raised my hand slightly. "Before this goes any further, check the security footage from the office hallway. You'll see who accessed that computer." A hush moved through the table. Karen nodded slowly. "We can review it. The system keeps 2 weeks of recordings." One board member asked, How long will it take to retrieve the file? Karen checked her watch. I can request it now. We should have it tomorrow. Olivia addressed both of us. We'll reconvene once the footage is available. This will give us a definitive answer. Emily murmured something under her breath that I couldn't catch. Her tears hadn't stopped, but her anger seeped through the cracks. A man near the door stood up, phone in hand. I just got confirmation. The video from that day is stored in our internal drive. We can access it as soon as the tech team pulls it. His announcement slowed everything down at once. The room quieted in a way that made my chest feel heavier. Emily swallowed hard. Do we really need video? Isn't this enough? It's necessary, Olivia replied. For everyone. The meeting adjourned without ceremony. Chairs scraped again. People gathered their notes. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with uncertainty. Emily stayed seated, wiping her face, refusing to meet my eyes. As I stepped out of the room, the man with the phone called after me. We'll have the footage ready tomorrow morning. Expect an update. I nodded, though my thoughts felt scattered. The hallway stretched ahead, and each step carried the weight of what tomorrow might reveal. The room filled slowly, people settling into chairs with a mix of caution and dread. A laptop sat on the table, already connected to the church's projector. No one spoke to me as I took a seat along the wall. Emily sat several feet away, pressed close to the corner, as if distance might shield her from whatever came next. Her fingers twisted together non-stop. Olivia cleared her throat. We're here to review the footage from Wednesday, she said. Let's proceed. Karen, the accountant, started the video. The screen showed the corridor outside the church office. A timestamp blinked at the bottom. Emily appeared within seconds, stepping toward the open doorway with her backpack slung loosely behind her. Emily flinched when she saw herself appear larger than life. Her eyes darted toward me, but I didn't meet them. The video shifted to a view inside the office. The guest computer glowed on the desk. Emily entered, glanced over her shoulder once, then sat down. Her hands moved fast, familiar with the keyboard. Karen paused the video. This is when the system logs show Michael's financial records being accessed. Olivia nodded for her to continue. The footage resumed. Emily's posture grew focused, her face angled toward the monitor while she typed something into the search bar. Moments later, she clicked through several screens. A few members leaned forward in their seats, breath caught in their throats. The download icon flashed. There it was, my financial statement pulled directly from my online account. Emily whispered, "That could be anyone." "You can't see the screen," a board member cut in. "But we see you downloading a file." Emily shrank in her seat. "I only checked email that day," she insisted. "Someone else must have used the computer before me." Karen stopped the video again. The system records the user. The guest account logged in with Emily's credentials. There's no one else. The footage resumed. A young volunteer walked past the office door, poking his head in for a moment. Emily turned her head toward him. The audio played faintly through the speakers enough to catch fragments. "This will get me a bigger support package," she said under her breath. "I'm just borrowing it from my dad." A stunned silence swept through the room. No one moved. The volunteer on the recording nodded uncertainly and walked away. Emily's entire frame collapsed in on itself. Her breath hitched. Her shoulders shook once. She covered her mouth with both hands, but the damage had already settled in every corner of the room. Karen ended the video. The board members exchanged looks that carried no ambiguity now. Olivia faced Emily. "You misrepresented your home situation. You accessed your father's personal records without permission. And you misled our volunteers." Emily didn't respond. She pressed her palms against her eyes, letting out a small, muffled sound. It didn't carry the shape of remorse, more like shock that her strategy had finally failed. I stayed still. No words came to me, and none were needed. She sensed that I'd seen everything, every detail she'd hidden. Olivia continued, "The church will require the full return of the assistance funds. You're suspended from all volunteer activities indefinitely." Emily let her hands fall to her lap. Tears streaked down her cheeks, but she didn't plead. Her energy drained fast, as if the truth had stripped her down to something bare and fragile. One board member added, "This is not a permanent ban, but trust must be rebuilt. That will take time." The meeting's tension loosened, replaced by a numbing stillness. Papers shuffled, chairs moved. No one knew what to say next. I stood up before anyone dismissed us. "Thank you," I said. Emily remained seated, head bowed. She didn't try to follow me. Stepping outside, the first gust hit hard. The air carried the kind of cold that cuts through layers not because of temperature, but because of timing. Each step toward the parking lot felt heavier than the last. A familiar voice called out. "Michael." Renee stood near the walkway, hands tucked into her coat. Her expression said she'd heard enough to piece together the truth. "You okay?" she asked. A small shake of my head was all I managed. She didn't press. She simply nodded once, giving me room to pass. The truck door felt heavier than usual when I opened it. I climbed in and sat for a moment, letting the seat hold my weight. Before I could start the engine, the phone vibrated. My supervisor's name lit the screen. I answered. "Michael," he said, "good news and bad news. The supplier delay is being reviewed, but we need you at the site first thing tomorrow. 7 a.m. sharp. I'll be there." "Good. We'll sort the rest later." The call ended. I exhaled, long and slow. The house felt still when I walked in that night. Emily sat at the kitchen table, elbows resting on the wood hands, folded without her usual fidgeting. She looked worn, in a way I hadn't seen before, stripped of the shield she usually carried. "The church will require the full amount back," I said. "They'll also suspend you from every volunteer program. People there won't trust you for a long time." Emily's eyes lowered, not in shame, more like disbelief. And I added, "You'll need mandatory therapy if you want to stay here." A slow breath left her shaky and uneven. I thought, "It would turn out different," she whispered. "Different how?" I asked. She shook her head. No explanation followed. No apology. No acceptance. A stack of folders waited near the counter, so I reached for them and placed them in my work bag. "I'm changing my schedule starting tomorrow. Longer days. I won't be able to track what you're doing anymore." Emily's gaze lifted, slightly surprised. "So what does that mean?" "It means you'll follow the rules we set," I said, "or you'll have to find somewhere else to live." Her chair scraped back as she stood. "You can't just—" "Emily," I said, keeping my tone even, "I'm done arguing. This is the line." She didn't speak. The fight she usually summoned so quickly never came. She just stood there, clutching the back of the chair for support, the reality settling in piece by piece. For the first time, she wasn't performing. She looked stunned. I gave her a moment before adding, "Your choice." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. After a long pause, she sat again, pushing her arms across her stomach like she was holding herself together. No excuses, no theatrics, just a small nod. That was her answer. I gathered the rest of my paperwork and set it by the door. Emily stayed at the table, staring at her hands, shoulders drawn in. Nothing about the moment felt like resolution. It was simply the point where everything had laid itself bare, and neither of us could pretend otherwise. The next week passed in a rhythm that left little room for thought. Work stabilized once I met the deadlines. My supervisor relaxed once the supplier issue was fixed, and I finally signed up for a technical training course I'd postponed for years. It felt grounding to make a plan that belonged to me. Emily moved through the days quietly, following the schedule the therapist set for her, and sending emails to arrange repayment to the church. The board released a statement saying she'd complete 40 hours of community service. Her name circulated around town for a few days, then faded as people shifted back to their own lives. On Saturday morning, I drove toward the forest trail I used to visit. The path curved along the edge of Flagstaff, leading toward pine and dirt that had steadied me more times than I could count. No grand revelation came. No sudden forgiveness or anger. Just movement. The trailhead stood a few yards ahead, marked by a simple wooden post. I paused there, letting the cold settle around me without pushing it away. The week felt heavy but clear in a way that only truth can make it. My breath rose in the air as I exhaled slow and steady. Then I stepped forward, letting the path take me in whatever direction it offered.